Welcome back inside for, yes, another edition of This Is Wrestling. Zach McGibbon once again hosting this edition. I am running through the gauntlet this week. I am making up for lost time from last week in terms of full hour-length shows. We had the WWE Unreal that's been released of episode 3. We have the review of C4 Wrestling earlier this week. You had the chat with myself and Lever Sage of catching up on everything going on in professional wrestling. Figured, why not? Let's do one more. Let's get another piece of audio out there. Our fourth piece of audio that we've recorded, third that you're hearing for this week. And as part of the gauntlet, I also have to change co-hosts as well, it looks like, for this week. We had Tanner, we had Lee, and now to help me with the Forbidden Door preview is the one and only AEW superfan of This Is Wrestling. It is Ben Soubliere. Ben, glad to have you on the program here tonight. How are you doing?
Thanks for calling me in. I'm like that bottom of the barrel reliever when they're getting deep into a baseball game and you're like, oh, I guess we'll put them against the left-handers.
Well, sure. Yeah, we'll set you up. We'll put you in the 8th inning so that we could set you up for the closer in the 9th, you know? Get through the inning. But we appreciate you taking your time out of your day. I know you got a busy schedule going on, but I know, of course, you are also a big fan of AEW, and so when the opportunity knocks to talk about AEW, you want to get the hot tag in and let your thoughts be known about what's happening in AEW. And a Forbidden Door show coming up on Sunday, and this Forbidden Door show taking place in the UK. It's going to be a Sunday afternoon show for us here in North America, specifically Canada. 9 matches on the card as we're recording here on this Thursday night. So let's just kind of take a look at everything here. Ben, is there a match in particular that you want to start off with that you want to get some takes off right away?
Let's kick off with a match. I would say this is a dream match for me. Back when Nigel McGuinness was Ring of Honor champion, I got to see him in Montreal at a show, and he was champion against defending his belt in a fatal 4-way. A match that also included one Sami Zayn, then El Generico, and Kevin Steen. And when I watched him in that match, I went, yep, this guy's the best wrestler on the planet. And getting to see him wrestle Zack Sabre Jr., who is the best technical wrestler in the world today, this is a dream match for me. I think Forbidden Door is the absolute perfect place for this, especially with it being in the UK. And Zack Sabre Jr. coming off of a really good showing in the G1. This is a match I am very excited for, and like I said, a literal dream match for me.
Yes, Zack Sabre Jr. taking on Nigel McGuinness for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. One of the ways that New Japan is being represented here, not as much New Japan representation in Forbidden Door as we've seen in years past. We're still going to get a couple of mentions here, of course, as we go through the card, but not really the big, AEW versus New Japan feel that we're seeing from this year. Just a little bit of a flavor. I thought maybe there'd be a little bit more CMLL, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. But in terms of this match here for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship, this is a match that I believe both men have been wanting for quite a while. Both, very much proficient in technical wrestling, especially Zack Sabre Jr. And Nigel McGuinness, of course. He's been making the rounds. He's had the return match with Danielson. He's also been in that tag match at the pay-per-view as well. And so he's been making his way in. Now he's got another singles match here against Zack Sabre Jr. And this was a match that I think we saw the 4-way where it was against him, Hechicero, Lee Moriarty, and Daniel Garcia. And you kind of knew right away once you saw those fours, like, they kind of have to strike here with Nigel McGuinness. This is the opportunity to do Zack Sabre Jr. versus Nigel McGuinness. There was a part of me that was hoping it would be Hechicero because I have seen those Zack Sabre Jr. Hechicero matches, and they were really fun to watch. But this is a different dynamic. Makes a lot of sense, as you mentioned, with both being from the UK. Daniel Garcia being with Nigel McGuinness, that adds a different factor to this matchup as well. I'll ask you straight up here, Ben. Do you see Daniel Garcia making his presence felt here? Do we see the heel turn that is potentially being teased here?
I think that with the turnaround time to All Out being 4 weeks, you kind of got to hit the ground running with building up your next feuds. So totally, I don't know if it'll necessarily be some sort of interference in the match itself or if it's something that happens after the match. But I think as you're building out that all-out card where they're going head-to-head with WrestlePalooza, presumably Brock Lesnar versus John Cena, AEW is going to look to put their best foot forward. Does that mean that's a Daniel Garcia versus Nigel McGuinness match? I think my hope is that with each match that Nigel McGuinness has, that he shakes off a little bit more of that ring rust. And I know, basically he's not wrestling a full-time schedule, so it's going to take him even longer to get there. But I mean, nobody on the planet's banking on Nigel McGuinness to win this match. So I think from that perspective, the Daniel Garcia part is, okay, how does that come into play and where do you kind of go from there? So my thought is it may not be in the match itself, but probably after the match we might get some shenanigans, if you will.
Something to set up a future program for sure.
Yeah, even if it's not at all out, just something kind of down the line.
Yeah, absolutely. I am going to pick Zack Sabre Jr., of course, to get the victory and retain. I think it just makes a lot of sense. And they're going to continue with ZSJ. He'll probably main event the Tokyo Dome on January 4th against Konosuke Takeshita, who won the G1. So,
well, actually, I don't know about that. Apparently, Takeshita said he'd like to walk into Wrestle Kingdom as champion. So I guess we'll see when he will cash in his opportunity, much like Zack Sabre Jr. did last year, getting to kind of pick his spot. So it wouldn't surprise me if Zack Sabre Jr. if Takeshita decides to do that somewhere else, maybe Wrestle Dream coming up in October. But I guess we'll see.
Yeah, you never know. And it's funny you do mention that, as Zack Sabre Jr. did cash in his title opportunity early as well. I want to say last year. He was supposed to have it at an event. I don't remember if it was for Wrestle Kingdom or if it was for Dominion, but I know he had cashed in his title opportunity earlier. Maybe they play off of that, but nonetheless, in this match here, I got ZSJ winning. I think this should be a fun match. I think Zack Sabre Jr., however, how much ring rust Nigel McGuinness has, I think Zack Sabre Jr. will do a good job of kind of hiding it. And in a way, with the way that he wrestles ZSJ, I think he'll be able to actually turn it into like a story of the match where he just kind of out wrestles Nigel, and Nigel's just trying to slowly figure his way back into how to just defeat this guy, because he's just got so many holds and so different from everybody else. And I am hoping, because we saw Bryan Danielson do commentary on Dynamite this past week in Scotland, I'm hoping that they find a way to get Danielson back out there again for this match, because I think that would be fascinating to hear his commentary. Kind of a reversal of Nigel doing commentary during a Danielson match. Now you're getting Danielson doing commentary during a McGuinness match. I think that could create an interesting dynamic there.
You want that clam digger on commentary.
That's right.
Am I wrong in thinking that Nigel did commentary for the Cruiserweight Classic when Zack Sabre Jr. was in that, or am I crazy?
I thought that was Danielson himself that did that.
Right.
Yes.
There you go.
It was Morrow and Daniel Bryan.
Yeah, you're right. You're totally right.
Yeah.
So a little bit of a throwback there if he actually gets on the call there. So
let's stick with a little bit more of the Forbidden Door elements and see another person that's crossing through the Forbidden Door. Kyle Fletcher taking on Hiromu Takahashi for the AEW TNT Championship. Kyle Fletcher is somebody that we've been very high on this show, continue to be very high on, and it makes a lot of sense for him to be the TNT champion right now, continue to have him grow and continue to show why he's one of the best wrestlers in the world. And I know he's had some tremendous matches on Collision, specifically I think to the Tomohiro Ishii match a few weeks back. That was a lot of fun to watch. Takahashi is kind of an interesting dynamic for Fletcher. I don't know if this is the same Hiromu Takahashi that I saw in 2018, 2019, when that New Japan juniors division, junior heavyweight division was quite at its peak. But I am interested to see how this match goes, and certainly to see how Fletcher can fare with Takahashi. Your thoughts?
I am a huge Kyle Fletcher fan. I am a card-holding member of the Fletch Light section. I think that if, everything we're hearing about Swerve and Ospreay both needing time off is true, I think that creates a bit of a gap that Kyle Fletcher can absolutely fill. And I predict that in the not too distant future, Kyle Fletcher will be a future AEW World Champion, possibly even getting there before Will Ospreay with this injury status kind of up in the air. But for this match here, honestly, I think pretty much every time Kyle Fletcher goes out there, he's putting on fantastic matches right now. You look at, basically being on the undercard of Forbidden Door the previous 2 years, to now getting a chance to kind of showcase himself, and then seeing where that kind of goes with the Don Callis family, one, increasing in size and also increasing in their prestigiousness with the TNT Championship and Takeshita winning the G1. That is my probably the storyline and the, I guess, like, direction I'm most interested in terms of AEW as a company is who's going to fill in that kind of that power dynamic in terms of who is your go-to guys coming up in the next year. And I think it begins with Forbidden Door and Kyle Fletcher.
Yeah, I like that analysis there. I'm going to pick Fletcher to retain here as well. Obviously, he's still very much early in his TNT title reign. And Takahashi, I am interested to see how he's able to do in this kind of matchup. Again, do I think he's going to go out there and stick it up? Absolutely not. But I don't know if this is the peak Hiromu Takahashi that people might have in mind when he goes out into the ring. But I still think this will be a really good match. I think this will be a good showcase for Kyle Fletcher, and much as the way that Zack Sabre Jr. is able to get a big victory to have something in his title defense streak, his title reign, Fletcher, it's the same for him for the TNT Championship. Let's continue walking through the Forbidden Door, shall we, and go to this four-way match for the TBS Championship, but not in New Japan in terms of walking the Forbidden Door. We're getting our CMLL representation through Persephone, and instead of New Japan, we're getting Stardom with Bozilla making her debut in AEW, and they are going to join Alex Windsor and taking on Mercedes Moné in this four-way matchup. And so really kind of when you think of Forbidden Door, I think this is one of those matches that kind of comes to mind, all these different wrestlers from different promotions being represented here. Are you familiar with any of the talents other than Mercedes Moné and Alex Windsor, obviously? What's your familiarity with Persephone or Bozilla?
Just kind of what I've seen in more recent highlights. I did go back a little bit just to get familiar with what I could in kind of a short amount of time since they kind of announced where the direction of this match was going. But for me, I think I've actually been really impressed with Alex Windsor in terms of where she's kind of jumped in while like the train was already moving with this women's division. I thought when she first came in, I was like, she's pretty good hand, if you will. But I think in terms of filling out this women's division and having a defined upper card and then like a high end mid card, I think she's found herself really quickly in a great spot where she doesn't look overwhelmed by being on TV. She's great technically. And she does have a little bit of a different look than a lot of the women on the roster. So big fan of what I've seen out of Alex Windsor so far. With the other two, I think when it comes to fatal four-way matches, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for everybody to kind of get their spots in and look good. And Mercedes Moné's been putting on, pretty much fantastic matches for the last 6 months or so. I think at the All In show, we talked about her match being a little bit clunky. But besides that, she's been, on a bit of a run here. So excited for this match and hoping to see some lucha elements between Mercedes and Persephone and seeing what the other two can kind of bring to it.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. I've only seen Bozilla a little bit, but what I've seen, it's like classic Haas wrestler for Bozilla. So I think she's going to be very unique in the sense of what we usually see from women's wrestling. I'm very excited to see how she's able to present herself, obviously coming from Stardom. She could be a real feature player coming out of this match, and I think I wouldn't shock me if you get some people asking, hey, when is Bozilla going to make more appearances for AEW? That's how high up I am on her, just from what I've been able to see. I haven't got too much Stardom, but from what I've been able to see, she did some work on the indies during WrestleMania weekend, and I saw a little bit of that, and I was like, oh, there's something here with the Bozilla.
Yeah, and I guess it was Tony Khan's first pick out of the roster of Stardom. And I think probably looking at how you're putting together that match, you wanted a bit of a different look. Obviously, don't think Mercedes Moné will be able to hit the Moné Maker on her, but I love that dynamic between a like you said, a big Haas and somebody like Mercedes Moné, where it gives them somebody to kind of work with and work against and kind of fight from the bottom there. So I think this could be a very sneaky good match.
Yeah, I'm very fascinated to see how this goes. Before getting into the pick, I did want to mention something here, and it was something I teased kind of earlier on. Persephone really the only CMLL appearance here on this card. Again, as we're recording, who knows? We might get something on the pre-show or whatnot. But Persephone really the only CMLL showcase or influence that we've seen on this Forbidden Door card. Interesting that we didn't get more. I thought maybe Mystico would make it onto this card. I thought maybe we would have more of a CMLL influence. Do you think it's enough there, Ben, in terms of the CMLL influence of Forbidden Door? Were you hoping for a little bit more? Or with the recent Grand Slam Mexico show about a month ago now, is it just too soon to kind of turn it around and have more lucha on the Forbidden Door show?
Yeah, I think that with the location and the timing in terms of being after the G1 instead of before, where the normal Forbidden Door kind of timeline is, I think we've ended up with a bit of a weird card as a result. One being in the UK, harder for the CMLL talent to get over there if they've got commitments in North America. And then again, less people available um, for the Forbidden Door show itself coming from New Japan, as they're just coming out of the G1 and have shows again, over the next month or so. So I think I would have liked to see Hechicero in there, especially as he's, I guess, an official member of the Don Callis family, as well as a couple other names as well. Like you said, Mystico, it looked like they were building to something there with MJF in terms of a rematch. And maybe we get that down the line. But yeah, I think with the cross promotion shows that they've had, the Grand Slam and other stuff that they've probably got coming up, I feel like it's less important, but it wouldn't surprise me if next year's Forbidden Door kind of goes back to the old format, just be kind of based on where the timing was this year, and All In going back to back to the UK and what they can kind of manage with that with the different timelines.
I should mention too, with the Mystico MJF rematch, there was an angle shot at Arena Mexico, I want to say last week, and it looks like they are going to do Mystico versus MJF at the anniversary show, which just so happens to be, Ben, the day before AEW All Out on the Friday show. So
there you go.
So I had a feeling that since it wasn't going to be on All In, that maybe they were saving it for CMLL itself. That's a match I am actively looking forward to. I'm going to try and seek out that Friday CMLL show between Mystico and MJF. So something I want to point out there. In terms of my pick to win, pretty safe pick here. I'm going to go Mercedes Moné to retain her title.
Yeah, I think we're 3 for 3 right now, which, Zach, we're not always the best predictors. We
some
like
worse
to
than others, yeah.
We like to pick things that kind of seem logical. We throw the occasional, oddball selection in there, just to mix things up. But yeah, right now we're kind of walking hand in hand. We'll see if the rest of this card will have some sort of split for us.
Yes, the podcast is still young. I might have a Jack Perry pick up my sleeve. Who knows? You never know with this Forbidden Door card. Let's move on. You picked Mercedes Moné, correct?
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't get to officially say that, but yeah, Mercedes Moné. I think 0.000% chance that she's losing.
There you go. Let's go and look a little bit more into the AEW main card. Let's go to the Unified Championship. Why not? With Kazuchika Okada defending his championship against Swerve Strickland. There was the report that came out today as we're recording that Swerve has been wrestling on a torn meniscus since 2019. So that would include his WWE run where he was wrestling on this torn meniscus. And then, of course, here in AEW, now it's come out that he's got a torn meniscus. And lo and behold, it's hard to believe here, Ben, but this news comes out just as when they're working the guy's knee over. I wonder if that's going to play into the match at all here on Sunday, if they're going to work around Swerve's knee. I can only imagine if that's going to be the case. What are your thoughts on this matchup, and who's your pick to win?
Yeah, the news about Swerve and his injury, I do wonder where that is potentially going with, personal investment in terms of going to the pay-per-view a month later. Um, but it is curious that now is when they've decided to release that and where they're going with that information. Um, I think that this match is going to be, when you when you look at it, you've got a whole bunch of people that are either injured, going to be injured, returning from a long layoff, returning from surgery. Then you've got Tanahashi who can barely walk as it is.
Yeah.
So I feel like this match is going to um, kind of hide some of those things that are kind of going on in the background and give people the opportunity to kind of work around that and a little bit of smoke and mirrors. Um, I think the big buildup here is eventually getting to Moxley and Darby, hopefully at our show in Toronto the month later. But with the lights out and with um, Will Ospreay's neck condition, I honestly I don't really know what to expect, except that probably a lot of the Young Bucks taking bumps in this match.
There you go. So I went from asking about Kazuchika Okada and Swerve Strickland and who you're gonna think is gonna win
Oh
and
my
Okada
God.
versus Swerve Strickland, and you
Yeah.
went right to the main event potentially.
Sorry,
The
I
lights
was,
out steel cage.
Yeah, sorry, went all over the place there. Sorry.
Let's not jump the gun here. I just need to know if Okada is retaining his
Yeah.
belt or not.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so I already had Okada
Yep.
going into this match because I feel like the big money match there is Takeshita. And
Yep.
how are they going to get to that? And with Okada kind of being squeezed into the Don Callis family, and it looked like at first it was going to be a bit of a one-off in that Kenny Omega feud, but then he's kind of stuck around there. And Takeshita, went away for the G1, and he's come back, and he has the match coming up on Collision. But I think the big money match there is to do something between Okada and Takeshita, and they purposely kept them away from each other, even when they were not part of the Don Callis family together.
Yep.
So for me, I was picking Okada regardless. The news about Swerve's knee and everything that's happening there, it would shock me if Swerve was going to win anyways. But my hope is that Swerve is still going to be around for a couple more months. But for me, the only person I want to take the title off Okada is Takeshita at this point.
Yeah, I'm also picking Okada to retain the belt. I think he's going to hold on to this thing until the next Continental Classic. I think they're just trying to establish just this belt and just how long and dominant of a reign it is for Okada. And like I've said on the podcast before, it just makes sense to have Okada wearing any sort of championship belt around his waist because it just makes a whole lot of sense. It just feels right when it comes to Kazuchika Okada. And I am in the same boat as you when it comes to even before the news came out, I was thinking Okada, but now that the news has come out, I'm even more thinking, yeah, this is going to be Okada retaining his belt. I'm pretty confident that we're both going to have the same pick on this one. So let's just quickly go through some of your favorite wrestlers here. Adam Copeland and Christian Cage taking on Kip Sabian and the returning Killswitch, the former Luchasaurus, returning, almost had a life-threatening injury situation there, and now he's back fully healed and healthy and ready to go, and returning here in this tag match against Adam Copeland and Christian Cage. I am picking CNC Music Factory, as Chris Holsky has now dubbed this team in our group chat. So I'm going to pick the Cope and Cage. What are your thoughts here, Ben?
Yeah, Edge and Christian, like the tag team that got me into, I would say, like hooked on professional wrestling. I had watched professional wrestling, a little bit WWF growing up, but really it was Edge and Christian winning the tag team titles at WrestleMania 2000 in the Triangle Ladder match that really like cemented my wrestling fandom. Edge being the first wrestler that I ever got to meet, having met both of them a couple of times now. They're just there in terms of my Mount Rushmore of wrestlers that are important to me in terms of my fandom. And like I had to go to Montreal to watch their match when it was announced that they were facing off in Montreal against each other for the TNT Championship. And I just had to be there.
Yep.
And likewise, the fact that we're, heading into Toronto and there's a pay-per-view and Cope and Christian are likely tagging there. Like, this is just, 11-year-old Ben's dream in terms of what I would pick on a pay-per-view. Um, so now, how do I expect the match to go? Obviously, I don't foresee them losing this early into their reunion. It does interest me, though, that in the promo for Luchasaurus's return, who was flipping the switch? Maybe a Jack Perry, based on the jacket of the person flipping the switch. So I don't know if this is something that they're going to plant the seeds of, and we get Jack Perry's flock at some point. But yeah, I think one, this establishes Edge and Christian as a tag team again. It's in the UK somewhere that they will be well appreciated. I do wonder, how are they going to enter? Are we going to get separate themes? Are we going to get some kind of mashup like Better Than You, Baby? Or are we going to get something fun that the UK can kind of sing along to? So for this match, I think I was kind of excited for Nick Wayne to kind of have a nice spot. And then he goes and breaks his foot, but also happy for Luchasaurus to come back. Double lung pneumonia or something like that.
Yeah,
That's kept him on the shelf.
Something crazy like that, yeah.
Yeah, so great for him to come back and be kind of like thrown right onto, like I said before, the train as it's moving. That is AEW right now. But yeah, I'll take Cope and Christian and hope that it leads to something special in Toronto.
Be careful who you say on your Mount Rushmore of favorite wrestlers, because if you say a name that's out of the norm of what people usually put on their Mount Rushmore, you hear about it, like I did when I went on 1200 and I said CM Punk was on my Mount Rushmore of favorite wrestlers, and I heard about it from people that how could I put CM Punk on there? So don't proclaim it too loudly, because there will be people that will come at you and be like, how could you pick that man or this person or this wrestler?
Like art, wrestling is subjective.
Yeah.
It is personal. It is beautifully specific to what captured your attention for this moment of time. And for me, Edge and Christian is the definition of the boyhood dream of believing in wrestling and picking somebody and just following their career for the entirety of it.
Yep. Absolutely. I agree. As someone that has that same criteria watching CM Punk, one thing I think we could both agree on: Karrion Kross on Lieber Sage's Mount Rushmore currently. So
Karrion Kross, yes.
So
he carries that cross for Karrion.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out why, but as you heard on the episode before this released, he called Karrion Kross a great wrestler on the show, which is a bold claim, but nonetheless, I don't know what's going on with Lieber on that take. It's had a lot of takes where I've had to push back, but this one is the dooziest.
Yeah, I think with Lee, he just gets every now and then he gets kind of infatuated with somebody.
Yep.
And right now it is Karrion Kross, and he will hype that man up until he can no longer hype him up anymore.
Yep.
He's a guy that I don't really need in AEW.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't surprise me if they try to capitalize on it, on kind of some of this momentum that he's built himself.
I was gonna say, what's this momentum you're talking about here? Are they still chanting "We want Cross" at the shows?
I thought it was "We want Brock," and we're gonna get Brock.
You're getting Brock. That's right. Yeah. Oh, that Paul Levesque.
Yeah.
But,
no. Sorry, Lee. I don't need Karrion Kross at my TV anytime soon again.
I just need that on the record, because I just want Lee to know that he is on an island on this one. We are not the ones watching an hour-long self-made documentary on his YouTube channel about his time in WWE, or the Ariel Helwani interview. I'm good on that. But nonetheless, Adam Copeland, Christian Cage are my picks to win against Kip Sabian and Kill Switch. Let's move on here and move up the card a little bit to potentially maybe the champions that Adam Copeland and Christian Cage will face off against at All Out. Potentially, maybe, who knows?
Maybe.
The Hurt Syndicate taking on Bro Dito and FTR in a 3-way tag team elimination match for the AEW World Tag Team Championship. The big question here, Ben Soubliere, is we asked this question at All In, and we're going to ask this question here at Forbidden Door. Will the Hurt Syndicate do a JOB?
Yeah, like I the fact that it's an elimination three-way match kind of throws a bit of a wrench into that thought, because if you are taking the titles off them and they didn't want to do the job, you just have them pin, either have Brodito pin FTR or vice versa to get those titles, and then they don't need to be involved in the pinfall. But now it's an elimination match,
Mm.
so color me surprised on that in terms of what potentially could happen. I loved that match on
Oh yeah.
Dynamite though. Like
Yes.
that was an absolute classic tag match. And FTR, it seems like on an annual basis, has those matches in them on free TV. You think about their match against Bullet Club Gold
Yep.
or the Bang Bang Gang, whichever trademark you prefer at the time.
Yep.
And it was just awesome. And here's another example of a match that really, obviously this one had some stakes in terms of who was going on to the pay-per-view, but just a kind of a Wednesday night, or in the case of the other match, the Bang Bang Gang match, a Saturday night on free TV, in quotations, TV
Yep.
streaming.
Yep.
Um, and it was just awesome. So I think as I'll say, as not lazy, but um as safe as the booking is to add a third team to it, I think, didn't that happen last year at All In as well? Pretty much the exact same thing. We had a draw, and it ended up being like a three-way tag team match
Yes.
between the Guns, the Bucks, and FTR.
Yes.
So like we've kind of gone to this well again. So to say that it's to protect, the Hurt Syndicate, I don't necessarily think it is. Not to say that everything we're hearing about them isn't untrue.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, somebody's got to take the pinfall for the elimination. So
How about I scratch it then? How about instead, is the Hurt Syndicate going to do the JOB? I'll say, is Bobby Lashley going to do the JOB?
yeah, I think that's fair. I don't think he is. I
No.
think that there's too much noise about everything that's going on with the Hurt Syndicate. How quickly the MJF storyline was dropped. How quickly the feud with Swerve Strickland was dropped. Um, the expression is like, if you get called a horse or whatever it is,
Yep.
a couple times per day, maybe you need to look in the mirror.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, I think obviously here the triple threat does mean that if Hurt Syndicate are going to lose the titles, somebody has to take the pinfall. It's probably going to be Shelton Benjamin.
Yeah.
But honestly, I could see this match going either way. I could see Brodito taking the titles and going for a run. If you are moving to FTR and Cope and Christian, they don't necessarily need the titles right away to kickstart that feud. With that being said, I'm still going to take FTR with the idea that they will face Edge and Christian at All Out for those tag team titles, but it wouldn't surprise me if Brodito pulled out a win as well.
Yeah, I'm going to pick FTR to get the victory here. I think they're just setting up for a tag title match. It just makes a lot of sense for Adam Copeland and Christian Cage to challenge for the tag belts against FTR. They've already got the feud built in with FTR heading into All Out anyways, so might as well throw the belts on there and you can have them win the tag team championships in Toronto. While I would love a Brodito tag title win, and because they've been really impressive. I mean, Brody King continues to be a guy I just love watching on TV, and Bandito, so glad to have him on the TV as well, with just having great matches, as you mentioned, against FTR this past Wednesday on Dynamite. And of course, the Hurt Syndicate is always a team that you got to keep an eye on. You never know what's going to happen when you hear all the rumors about the JOBs, and if they're going to be willing to put over teams. There's been a lot of talk about Lashley, and a lot of talk about MVP, and a lot to talk about Shelton Benjamin. It's funny you mentioned with the horse on the episode as well. Lee made the equation to like, if it quacks like a duck, walks like a duck, and all this stuff. But the one thing we also have to remember with the Hurt Syndicate, and I always have to make mention of it with Hurt Syndicate too, whenever they have these big time title defenses, and it's an important point to make. And I always want to make sure and stress it and get it across to people. And that is, of course, that they hurt people. And that is the thing that I want people to leave behind whenever we talk about the Hurt Syndicate, is that they hurt people.
Maybe they should change their name to Hurt People, because hurt people, right, Zach?
That's right. Hurt people, hurt people. And you know what? There is kind of a relation with Adam Copeland and Christian Cage. Christian Cage, I think, is a hurt man. And he's just been hurting. both these men have been hurting. So why not get a little bit of a dose of Hurt Syndicate? Because the hurt people will hurt people. How about that? Not feeling the idea there, eh, Ben?
I love it. I was just giving the idea.
That's a thought. There was a resounding silence. I was like, all right, nope, that's not getting past the booking meeting. All right, we'll just scrap that one and throw it out in the garbage.
No, I was just letting it breathe, just letting it sit there for timing.
Yeah, this is the WWE Unreal version right now. This is the real Unreal going on right now. Just creative ideas being scrapped. But I've got FTR winning the tag match. Let's go to the other match before we get to the world title match here. The match that Ben was so excited to talk about. He was willing to jump over the Kazuchika Okada Swerve Strickland review and wanted to get right into the lights out steel cage match. Golden Lovers, Kenny Omega and Kota Ibushi, Darby Allin, Hiroshi Tanahashi, and Will Ospreay taking on the Death Riders, Jon Moxley, Claudio Castagnoli, the Young Bucks, Matt Jackson, Nick Jackson, and of course, Gabe Kidd. So a little bit more New Japan representation. Interesting with Gabe Kidd because he could not compete in the G1 and he got injured during the G1. But as we've learned with this sort of match, they're willing to throw in some guys that might not be 100% to try and sell some tickets here. As we mentioned with Will Ospreay as well and Hiroshi Tanahashi, which is just, it hurts to watch him walk down the ramp. I could hear the clicks as he's coming down the ramp. I saw someone call, you have the great Kali. He's the medium Kali is what I saw. Not great for old Hiroshi Tanahashi, my ace, but he is clearly up there in years, is going to retire at the end of the year. But I think, Ben, this is a match type that's going to work out best for everybody involved because while, like I said on the previous episode, on paper you see the match type and you're like, oh, this is going to be a hardcore match and they're going to beat each other up and how are they going to be able to get out of this? But when you have stuff like this, I think you could get away with a little bit more instead of having to constantly, do your flat back bumps and all that and put your body through a little bit more. I think you could protect yourself a little bit in this kind of match in a weird way because there's so many people and you could delegate so many spots to different people. Certainly with some of these wrestlers, they'd be able to do that. But a very interesting match as well, the Lights Out Steel Cage match. Before I get your pick, do you think there's a chance that this is kind of the unofficial main event where they do the world title and then because it's a lights out, it's like, all right, the official card is over, but now we're lights out. This is not being recognized, but this is the final match on the show and whatnot. Do you think there's a potential here that this is the last match on the card?
Yeah, I think it has to be. Just kind of the way you described it, where they turn off the lights and they kind of say like, hey, this part of the show is over and now this part's unsanctioned. So I think it kind of has to be. I think also with the names that you have in that match, that's kind of the expectation kind of going into it. If you guys can just like cut that whole part where I got off topic and mentioned all the stuff about all these injured people.
I'll just take that part and cut it in here. Yeah.
Yeah, no, sorry, went off on my rant about injured people when we're talking about Swerve and his meniscus. But yeah, I think they've kind of set the precedent before where they dim the lights and everything and they put the lights back on for this match. I do wonder how much of the Will Ospreay stuff is potentially a work versus, hey, yeah, he's actually going like, on Tuesday after the pay-per-view to go and get the surgery. And like you said, there's a lot of people in this match that you don't necessarily want taking bumps, but thankfully there's also the Young Bucks in this match and Claudio and Darby willing to take those bumps. On the plus side, in terms of all these people that are either injured or returning from injury or about to go off an injury, I thought Kota Ibushi looked really good in his last couple of AEW appearances. So interested in seeing how he looks in this match. This match gives me Lethal Lockdown vibes in terms of what is potentially going to be happening here. Whereas, like, are they going to have weapons kind of hanging from the rafters or from the cage itself? Is everyone just going to bring weapons in with them as they're coming down to the ring? So I think this match will be a lot of fun. Gabe Kidd, I guess, was it ankle sprain, something like that?
Yes.
In the G1 where he had to pull out.
I believe that's what the injury was, yes.
Yeah, and they had said like he would basically he kept forfeiting like night by night.
Yeah.
They were trying to see if he could eventually get going and um, actually participate in the tournament. But I guess when it got to the point of there's like zero chance that he can win this now based on the number of forfeits he had. I guess they probably thought it was best to take him off the tour for a month. But hopefully he's good to go in this match. And like you said, probably a lot of fun and not a lot of back bumps required because uh, it might just be a lot of mayhem in this match.
Yeah, it should be an interesting watch for sure, and see how everybody does. I am interested to see how Tanahashi will look in this, because I've said that brain is still there when it comes to Tanahashi and how he could lay out a match, and his psychology is there. It's just he's the modern day Keiji Muto now, if you want a Japan equivalent. An older guy that clearly his knees are gone, was at the top of New Japan during his era, but clearly at the end, and now taking part in a retirement tour. Now, Hiroshi Tanahashi is a much more giving wrestler than Keiji Muto was in his final months in his retirement tour. But all that to say, this one's a little bit more of a coin flip for me on who's going to get the victory. There's a part of me that if this is the final match, I could see them going out with the baby faces, Golden Lovers, Darby Allin, Tanahashi, and Ospreay getting the victory. But there's also a part of me that's thinking, you want to keep this Death Riders thing going for a little bit longer so that you can finally have that conclusion. And obviously they had the big loss at All In. You want to, I don't want to say heat them up again, but you want to try and get them on the comeback a little bit so that when eventually Darby Allin and Jon Moxley have their one-on-one match, it becomes a little bit more important. So I've kind of been juggling it a little bit, but I'm going to go with the baby faces here to get the victory, because I am going to go under the impression that Will Ospreay is going to be out for a while after this, and that they were kind of saving him so he could work the UK show, and then he'll be gone for a little bit after that. And so I'm going to pick the baby faces here. What are your thoughts?
Finally, we're seeing the fork in the road, the divide between our picks. I will go with the Death Riders and company. I think that because you've got the pay-per-view a month later, you've got to set up some matches and some feuds. Death Riders have kind of been racking up the losses since All In. When you look at, they no longer have the trios titles, they don't have the main title. So I think getting them back in the win column is probably going to be good for them, especially in this type of match. When you have got Will Ospreay that is apparently going to need surgery, it might be a good way to write him off as well. And for me, this whole pay-per-view is me looking to see what direction they're going to be going in, and who is going to kind of fill the void, if there is a void left by Ospreay and Swerve, and what the next couple months looks like with Wrestle Dream and Full Gear, coming pretty quick, and then heading into the Continental Classic. So I'm going to take the Death Riders and company. I feel like we're going to get two matches at All Out that are kind of built from this one. I could totally see Golden Lovers versus Young Bucks. I'd have to go back and look to see when the last time that match would have occurred, but I feel like it was 2018.
I remember that match. That was one of my favorite tag matches that year.
Yeah, so I could totally see, like, you're going to have Kenny Omega in a high-profile match at All Out. He's Canadian, Toronto. It has to happen, and I think if you're building to something meaningful in about a month, here's the opportunity to do it. So I think you could get Golden Lovers versus Young Bucks coming out of this, and then obviously the continuation of Darby Allin and Jon Moxley. They've kind of teased at the body bag stuff a couple of times. It wouldn't surprise me if we get some sort of coffin match at All Out between Moxley and Darby, or I say body bag or coffin match, could be a body bag match for all I know. But yeah, I think this will be a fun way to kind of end the night. We've seen with a lot of the Anarchy in the Arena matches that the crowd gets really into it, and I think the UK crowd will bring it for this match.
Should mention the Golden Lovers versus the Young Bucks took on each other at New Japan Pro Wrestling Strong Style Evolve back on March 25th, 2018. I remember watching that match live and thinking this was one of the best tag matches I've ever seen. And at the time, I remember it was right in the peak. Like, you thought people were saying the Young Bucks were bad wrestlers. Now, some of the people that want to go against the Young Bucks, that was like really at its peak in 2018, 2019, especially when AEW just started. If you want proof that these guys know how to work, tell me that Matt Jackson doesn't sell the hell out of his back during that match. That's what I remember from the original Golden Lovers Young Bucks match. So I would love to see that at AEW All Out in Toronto. Bring that back, especially with the caliber of all those talents. Even with Ibushi, I'm still not 100% sold we're going to get the full Ibushi, and I don't think we ever will. But if we could get like 70%, 80% Ibushi, then I think we got a pretty damn good wrestler showing up for AEW. So with that, let's go to the World Championship matchup. And things changed on Dynamite this past week. It seemed like Maxwell Jacob Freeman, MJF, was going to execute the contract. Still not fully in love with the idea of executing a contract. Reminds me of cashing in your contract a little bit and like some stuff away from WWE when the alternative. But it seems like it's going to continue on a little bit because MJF, and this is a real scenario that played out on TV, folks, is Mark Briscoe was kidnapped. Ricochet helped with the kidnapping, I believe. And he was doused in gasoline, and MJF had the lighter, was about to light a man on fire on national TV before Hangman said, no, please, I will abide by your requests. So the request being, if Hangman is counted out or disqualified, he will lose the title, and the contract that MJF won at All Out would not have to be executed during this match. He could save it for a future title match if he wanted to. First of all, Ben, your thoughts on the matchup, the build to this, and obviously what we saw on Dynamite, and your victor.
Yeah, I thought the build has been pretty good. It's kind of weird how it's intertwined with Mark Briscoe. I don't know where the conglomeration was last, I guess, Wednesday night.
Yep.
What day is today? Thursday? Yeah, last night.
Yep.
Aren't they supposed to help him out? Isn't that their whole thing?
One would think.
I don't know. But yeah, MJF threatening to burn him alive. Doing his best Eddie Kingston impression, I guess. Yeah, I feel like this was kind of like completely unnecessary in this feud. I thought they kind of sold it last week with, excuse me, Hangman kind of getting one up on MJF and basically calling him out and forcing him to use that contract, which I thought made like a ton of sense in terms of, yeah, to your point, we don't need another Money in the Bank. I think it makes sense to use the contract as a like, hey, I get a title match, but I get to pick where it is instead of like a cash-in opportunity. So I thought that was awesome. I thought it made sense. You baited MJF into doing something that he's kind of done to everybody else over the course of his career. And then they kind of flipped the script again. And I feel like it was unnecessary. As excited as I am for the match, and I think it's going to be a really good match. Obviously, I think they had a match back in the spring, and there was kind of still some meat there left on the bone. So I'm excited for the match. I will take Hangman regardless of the stipulations in this. I feel like the stipulations were kind of unnecessary, but I guess it's a way to keep MJF looming in the background, even if he loses his match, and keeps his ability to cash that in and kind of always be lurking in the background.
I'm also picking Hangman to retain the championship here. I'm very much in agreement with you on this. I felt like the angle this past Wednesday was unnecessary and goofy, if I'm being quite honest. And I'm kind of at the point where I'm done with the goofiness in pro wrestling. I'm just an altogether. I like less of it now. I get it. Pro wrestling isn't real and it's fake and ha ha ha, right? But after having to see puppets at Triple Mania this past Sunday, I've kind of had enough. I'd like to think that what I'm watching is not making a mockery of what I'm watching and insulting my intelligence. So I thought the angle was pretty goofy. It was the kind of the same reaction I had when Hangman burned down Swerve Strickland's house, and then you had the crowd react, where it wasn't this kind of dramatic thing. It was more like that was arson, I think was the chant, was when that happened. when you're getting more of a comedic chant for a serious angle like that, when you're trying to do something like that, it's tough. Now, to be fair, they didn't get a chant like that for this, but um, just overall, just can we get less goofiness in pro wrestling right now? I get it. I get it. Haha. Irony. Do you understand that this is not real? I get it. I understand the joke. Please don't bash it over my head. With that being said, I asked this question to you, Mr. Soubliere. Hey, I'm very confident that Hangman will retain his belt the first time. Is there the potential that MJF cashes in his contract again? He executes the contract after the match is done, after he's already beaten up Hangman, and we have the match again on this pay-per-view? Or do you think there is going to be a way for this rematch between these two, which is inevitable, to potentially even go to All Out?
Yeah, I honestly, it's a great question because I keep looking at the card for All Out and I can't figure out who is next for Hangman after MJF, on short notice, unless you're going to do some sort of like cross promotional match where it's Zack Sabre Jr. versus Hangman, or something like that. And it's not an actual title match or whatever it is. I can't figure it out. So like an MJF rematch, regardless of how you get there, makes a lot of sense. However, I feel like there's still something there between MJF and Mark Briscoe. Um, One, he almost lit the man on fire on Dynamite,
Yep.
and
That would
two,
make me mad too if I was almost lit on fire on national television.
yeah. So I feel like there's still something there. So maybe it's something where, Hangman wins and then MJF goes to cash in his title match, and then Mark Briscoe prevents that from happening, and he builds to a match All Out between them. For me, if I had if I had the pencil, I would book the dog collar match between MJF and Mark Briscoe at All Out, and let that kind of finish that feud before moving back to Hangman and MJF, if that's kind of the plan to do that rematch at some point. But yeah, I don't like this whole cash in thing with this contract. It feels unnecessary in terms of, everything else in terms of mechanics and stuff like that to get a title match for somebody. Um, and I just feel like MJF is involved in too many of these things as it kind of stands with the Dynamite Diamond Ring. Um, so I will say I hope not. I hope it's just a straight match and MJF still has the contract that he can cash in at some point, and that that can go on for a whole year or whatever it is. But it wouldn't surprise me if there's something to do with Mark Briscoe, um, when all things are kind of said and done. Because to your point, it felt unnecessary to bring him back into this feud, but they went out of their way to do it on Dynamite. So I feel
Mhm.
like they're still working towards something there.
Yeah. And just so we're clear, I'm a big fan of Mark Briscoe. I think he's been putting in some great work the last couple of months, to the point where I'm thinking, why is he being kind of pushed as this upper mid carder, like gatekeeper to the main event? I kind of want to see him more in the main event, if I'm being honest, because I think he just connects with the crowd and he wrestles. He still wrestles very well. The match he had with Kyle Fletcher on pay per view a few pay per views back was really really good. And so he's still a high level competitor, and I think he could be fitted very well in that scene. It's just how we're getting there right now is not exactly what I would write up if I was in that creative meeting.
Yeah, Mark Briscoe is just he's so reliable. And
Yes.
it is such a shame that we didn't get the Briscoes in AEW as a tag team. Obviously, we got them in Ring of Honor, and their feud with FTR was fantastic. But it's just such a shame because, um, not being able to see the two of them together and seeing with all the different people on the roster who they could have mixed it up with. I think Mark Briscoe in the Continental Classic was one of these just wild card figures, and every match that he had was fantastic. And I think that's what he is. Like you said, you called him the gatekeeper to the main event, and he's just so reliable, and he really pulls the best out of everyone. And he's um, very adaptable. You can put him in a hardcore match and he fits in. You can put him in something as technical as the Continental Classic and he fits in.
Yeah.
And to your point, while you were done with the silliness in wrestling, he kind of brings this like ability to his silliness, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
I get what you mean. It's not overbearing. There's like a
Yeah.
charm to it that Mark
Yeah.
Briscoe brings. You know what he reminds me of? This might be a little bit niche for our audience, and I apologize, but it's just popped in my head. You will get this reference, I think, but he reminds me of Chris Hero a lot on the independent scene.
Totally.
Like PWG, especially. He was kind of that guy when there were newer guys entering PWG. He was the first guy that a lot of those guys would wrestle to really establish himself. And Chris Hero was like the ultimate guy that was just consistent. He was so good on the indies, he was getting Wrestler of the Year votes. I remember in the Observer. So it reminds me of him a lot, where he's just a reliable guy, and you know you could throw him out there and put him against anybody, and you're going to have a great match because that guy is involved. So interesting note there to kind of end off. So yeah, Hangman Page. I think the only one we really disagreed on was that steel cage match. I think that was the only one we were at a fork in the road.
Zach, as tired as I was and I slept up, you have missed a match.
Did I miss a match?
You missed a match.
Which
you
match?
Missed the AEW Women's World Championship.
I did miss the Toni Storm and Athena match. Oh, all right. Timeless Toni Storm versus Athena. I'm trying with Toni Storm. I really am trying with Toni Storm. I'm not even like opposed to the feud or anything like that. I think these two are going to have a great match. I don't know, man. I'm not really feeling this character like others are. I think it's just like, it's funny to talk about goofiness. It's just too much for me. I find the innuendos a little too much for me. Like I get it as like a one-time thing, but the big thing in pro wrestling, the big issue that's going on in all the companies right now is that when they find the one joke, they hammer it to the ground so much. Like, I love the Young Bucks joke where it was like they were getting treated as jobbers, but we're now in the 5th, 6th week of this, and you're not going to believe this, but the joke is that they're not EVPs anymore and they're being treated as jobbers. I saw the comparison being like, it's an SNL skit when you've seen it for the 5th or 6th time, and it's just not as good as the original. So I'm kind of done with the Toni Storm stuff character-wise. I think I've seen what I've needed to see, which means, of course, I'm going to have more of this for the next 3 months, 6 months. But all that aside, match type-wise, I am looking forward to this. I think these two will have a good match. Athena's been well built up. However you feel about Ring of Honor, and it's not exactly lighting the world on fire with these quality opponents in Ring of Honor, but there is a credibility factor that Athena has that helps her come in, of course. Winning the gauntlet at All In helps with that as well. Toni Storm versus Athena. I've got Toni Storm retaining. I don't see Athena taking the championship here. I think they're going to continue on with this title reign for Toni Storm and continue to have her be the focal point of the women's division.
Fair. I disagree. I'm going to pick Athena.
Okay.
Just to be a little bit different. I feel like at some point we kind of need to hop off the train of every champion needs to have this long run. And not to like, I don't mind that. Like, I grew up watching Ring of Honor with Samoa Joe's legendary run.
Yep.
So like that still does it for me. But if every big title reign is 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, 1 year, then you kind of lose some of the specialness with, hey, what if they just lose on this random show. So I feel like at some point we need to kind of hop off that train a little bit, and give some opportunities to people that deserve it to kind of run with the ball for a little bit and see how they do. You can always course correct. You could put the title on Athena for a couple of months and be like, yeah, you know what, not moving the needle, go back to Toni Storm. But I think that with the momentum that Athena's kind of had lately, and just there's nothing really left for her to do in terms of Ring of Honor, that a win here would kind of put her up in that upper echelon of the women's division. So right now, I think that upper part of the women's division, starts with Toni Storm and Mercedes Moné, and there's a couple other people that have kind of hovered around there. And I think that if you can strap, Athena with the championship and give her a chance to kind of shine with it, I think that then you're just enhancing what's already there in the women's division, and you're giving more opportunity for fresh feuds. Obviously, Toni Storm's wrestled a lot of people over the last year, same with Mercedes Moné. And so to get Athena back, or I guess into that title picture and defending, I think gives you a little bit of a different look. So just for the sake of where I think everything's going in terms of the pay-per-view, in terms of upcoming feuds and stuff like that, I'm going to be, pick a little bit off the board. I'll go with Athena.
All right. I like that layout. I still disagree, but I like that layout. The way that you've presented it here. Should be interesting to see where that goes for that match. And now I've got every match on the card. We've gone through it. We have.
Is there a pre-show?
Well, I'm sure there's the 0 hour. I don't think there has been any matches announced for 0 hour. I will be the psycho that watches the 0 hour matches because I do like pro wrestling, and I like seeing the wrestling matches on 0 hour. But we'll see what who knows? Maybe Big Boom AJ returns and he makes the trip out to the UK, and I get another Big Boom AJ match. Who knows? But that is all the matches for Forbidden Door. We were able to get through all of them here, Ben. And is there anything else that's on your mind? Doesn't even have to be AEW related. I know there's been a lot of news about WWE and counter programming, specifically with the WrestlePalooza show taking place on the 20th of September. And of course, moving up the ESPN deal, of course. And that's going to be the first show on ESPN as well. A lot happening in terms of the movement from WWE, clearly seeing AEW more as a threat and really trying to amp up the pressure on AEW. As an AEW fan, seeing all that stuff happening with WWE, what do you make of that?
For me, I really liked Tony Khan's answer today where he said, we're focusing on our own product.
Yep.
Here's the thing. If you like Coca-Cola and you don't like Pepsi, very little is going to change. Very little can happen to force you to change your opinion.
Yep.
You might have the occasional crossover and you might be at a restaurant that doesn't serve Pepsi, so you drink Coke or vice versa. But ultimately, the WWE's counter programming literally has no impact on my enjoyment of AEW. If anything, it makes me excited to know that, okay, if they're putting on WrestlePalooza, then hopefully that means the pay-per-view that we're getting to see in Toronto, AEW is going to put their best foot forward and really try to stack that card. So I think like locally, WWE's got a month to sell those tickets. And I'm, just based on the product and who's buying the tickets, they're probably still going to do well with it. But like, you're not going to hurt the Toronto crowd by having a show in the States. So really you're trying to take eyeballs off of the pay-per-view, but like people that were paying money to buy the pay-per-view anyways are probably still going to buy the pay-per-view. And then watch AEW or WWE WrestlePalooza, whatever it's called, on delay if they need to. So for me, it's scummy. It's everything I hate about the business of pro wrestling. I've always been somebody who looked for an alternative, even when I was, in the, I would say in the thick of my WWE fandom. I found TNA, I found Ring of Honor, I found PWG, and all these other alternatives. And it wasn't so much because like, WWE is bad. It's because I like different things in my wrestling than what WWE caters to. So for me, counter programming, it sucks in terms of like WWE feeling the need to do it, but ultimately it has no impact on my enjoyment of the product.
Well, there you go. And I think that's what we'll end the show on there is what's happening. Very excited for Forbidden Door. We'll see what happens at the end of the show. And hopefully we'll get a better idea after Forbidden Door, obviously selfishly as we're going to AEW All Out. Hopefully a better idea of what's going to happen on that All Out show as well. But thanks again, Ben, for hopping on. Again, lots of audio this week. Lots and lots of audio. I am, petering out. I am trying to reach across for the rope so I could try and get the tag out so we could try and get all this pieces of content out. So that's going to be it in terms of the audio this week. Of course, we'll be back next week with a full review of the Forbidden Door show. So stay tuned for that. But thanks again, Ben, for coming on.
Absolutely. I will be here anytime you need to reach over that hot tag. And Hopefully the next time I'm not all over the place and jumping into the main event partway through a match.
No problem. I will not hold that against you at all, Ben. But no, really appreciate it. And yeah, we'll let the listeners know to stay tuned for next week as well for our Forbidden Door review. But until then, take care. Have a good one.